Kegel lived some 3 miles from Grassy Creek on the Carolina side of the Smoky Mountains, in a small cabin at the very end of Tin Can Holler. Aunt Lavina Crashaw declared him to be the fussinest man in these parts, and the truth is, he was. When anything went wrong in the Kegel household, the old man would begin to bark and snarl, and once he got started, he never seemed to stop. If one of the young'uns broke the clothesline, old Hank would scold about it for pert near 6 months. Not a good, lively, satisfying scold, but a smothered, growling, rumbling, nagging sort of scold. It was such a racket that even a saint would throw up his hands and give up. Old man Kegel's best record was the time his wife let a pot of lard boil over and burn up the kitchen window curtains. Now, although this happened in 1942, by 1954, the miserable old reprobate was still throwing it up to her. But naturally, Hank was lavish when it came to dishing out his own advice and directions. He never set out for town without leaving a mountain of instructions for the rest of the family that was big enough to fill a small book. And part of those directions was always to beware of getting into any situation that would require them to spend a single penny while he was gone. Indeed, he considered himself the only member of the family who could safely handle a piece of money. His constant adage was,
"A fool and his money are soon parted."
The coin which passed out of his hand was foreordained to be in some way lost. And you talk about being stingy. Each time Hank's wife went to town, the old man would ascertain the smallest amount possible that was needed, and then he'd only give her half of it. And that was only after predicting that she would either lose it outright or get swindled out of it in some manner. Now, old Hank had a son named young Hank, and of course, young Hank's life was made a burden to him. Old Hank was just as hard on young Hank as he was on his wife. Like that one time, young Hank accidentally chopped down a young apple tree for firewood. Old Hank moaned and complained so long that another tree had grown in its place and was now bearing apples. Well, anyway, one day when young Hank was about 14, old Hank decided on a most astonishing move. When he decided that he was going to take young Hank to see the circus down in the big town of Grassy Creek. I tell you, young Hank was plumb tickled, until old Hank promptly announced that the boy would have to pay his own way into the show, with the quarter that he had earned for working around the farm over the past month. The trip down to the circus would teach the young boy how to use money. That way, he wouldn't grow up and be wasteful like the boy's mother was, old Hank announced. So they set off for Grassy Creek, with old Hank first cautioning his wife,
"Keep your wits about you if you got any, and don't spend any money while I'm gone. And whatever you do, don't burn up another set of window curtains."
On the way to town, old Hank admonished the boy about every 5 minutes to hold on to his money. The old man himself had 2 $1 bills, and once they arrived in town, old Hank went to a trusted storekeeper and got them changed into small coins so that he would be able to pay an exact change, since he didn't have any faith in those sneaky circus folks, nor did he trust that they would give him back the right change. They would just try to cheat him out of his money. And then when they reached the fairgrounds, he said to young Hank,
"Where's your money, boy?"
"It's right here, Pa," answered young Hank, as he patted his trousers pocket.
"What? You mean to tell me your money is laying loose, ready to just fall out of your pocket any minute? Thunder and mud, boy. Stick your right hand in and grab it, and hold tight. That's the only way a man can be sure of his money, and that's to keep it right in your fist, and keep your fist in your pocket. That's the way I've got mine,"
he said as he pointed with his other hand down to his own bulging pocket.
"Hang on to that quarter like a dog does a root, boy, if you want to get into the show. 'Cause I tell you now, if you lose it, like I know you probably will, don't come a-whining and crying to me, expecting me to get you in, 'cause I won't."
Just then, the pair began to move about the grounds, waiting for the ticket booth to open. And even after they started selling tickets, old Hank just stood back in the distance, waiting patiently, thinking that perhaps the price of the tickets might be reduced at the last minute, or that they might get a chance to slip under the tent for free. As the old man and his son waited, old Hank noticed a passel of regulation circus horses tied to a hitching post. I tell you, they were just as gorgeous as Easter eggs, and they had been used in the parade. The two Hanks walked over and started looking at them. In his enthusiasm, the young boy took his financial hand from his pocket, but old Hank detected the action instantly, and he turned on him, boiling with indignation.
Get your dag-nabbit hand back in your pocket, boy. Do you want to ruin me with your carelessness? Like your mother? Like I already told you. A fool and his money are soon.
But just then, one of the horses swung around, almost crashing into old Hank. It took a moment for the old man to get his bones moving, but finally he made a quick step backwards, where he tripped on a tent peg and went crashing down. Instinctively, to save himself, old Hank jerked his hand from his pocket violently, and in that moment, there rained down $2 worth of quarters, nickels, and dimes into a crowd of boys who were standing by. While old Hank roared and struggled to get to his feet, the passel of boys gathered up the money, stuck it in their pockets, and disappeared into the circus tent. Now, it might not have been the right thing to do on the part of young Hank, but he too saw this as an opportunity. So he took off, dodging his way through the crowd, where he bought his ticket and rushed into the big circus tent. About an hour later, old Hank had walked back home. He sat down on the porch, and he seemed lost in thought. Old Hank looked up as Aunt Lavina Crayshaw approached. The old woman took a seat beside him. Her eyes were softening slightly at the sight of his forlorn expression. "Well, Hank Cagle, what's got you looking like a dog left out in the rain?" she asked. And old Hank just shook his head, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards in a reluctant smile.
Well, Lavina, I reckon I've learned something the hard way today. With all my fussing over nickels and dimes, in a flash, it was all gone, just like that.
And Aunt Lavina spoke up. "Well, I reckon it's time you start loosening up those fists of yours. It ain't about keeping safe what you got. Sometimes it's about what you give away that counts." Just then, old Hank's wife stepped out to join him on the porch, and old Hank looked up at her.
"Baby, let's go to town tomorrow. It's about time I bought you a new set of kitchen window curtains. No strings attached."